man.
did it. Welcome to Twigg and Jenkins. Carrie Twigg just did it. We have America's favorite U.S. senator. It's like not even close. I mean, I am
Have
biased.
you been talking to my mom? Is that what she told you to say?
No. I am biased. Senator Andy Kim is someone who I have known and loved and who I have had the honor of calling my friend. And I am just so proud and so excited for the history you've already made, the history you are making right now. And in looking at these images of these town halls this past weekend in this historic moment, could not be more proud of you, Andy.
Oh,
so
thank
you. Thank you for coming to
appreciate
Twigg and Jenkins.
Thank you for being here,
Let's
Senator.
go.
That's why I did the town halls, to hope that I would get invited here. So
Get
this
more
is great.
podcast invites.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Of course.
That's why any senator does anything right now, apparently.
Yeah.
How are you feeling, man? How did those town halls go? Because the images were incredible.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it was really important right now when I was trying to think through, like, how do we try to meet this moment?
Yeah.
What is it that we need to do? And, like, I think for me, I try to think back to 2017. I try to think back to last time we had Trump and the Republicans in control of Congress and the White House. And back then, I was regular citizen Andy. I had never even thought about running for office. And, I just remember like that moment and just what it felt like when they were trying to gut the Affordable Care Act. So like a lot of it is driven from that sense of that, like, I need to think about my job. Other senators, other electeds, we need to think of our jobs not just as legislators or political leaders, but we need to be part of the movement. We need to be movement leaders. We need to think about how to harness that energy. And I think that's a big breakdown. So I just figured, like, look, like, I'm not going to ask for permission. I'm not going to ask for people to, give me instructions. I'm just going to get out there and do it. And I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of people tell me, like, maybe don't do this.
Really?
Like, yeah, I mean, like,
Why?
because like, I'm going to get the tough questions and people are like, like, you don't know how that anger is going to be. They could come after you and like, and that's not going to be a good look. And I just said, look, like, what's the point of this stuff if you're not going to actually do it, right?
Yeah, answering questions to citizens feels like part of the job of a U.S. senator.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, if you're, like, no one's holding a gun to our heads to do these jobs. Like, if you're not interested in going out and talking to your own constituents, then maybe that's not the right job for you. Right?
There's so many other options. There's
exactly.
so many other things you could do.
Yeah, exactly. So, what I've been saying, this is like the mantra I've been having. It's like I've been saying, like, if you're only having comfortable conversations in politics, it means you're not talking to all the people you need to be talking to. Like, this is inherently a job that should feel uncomfortable constantly. And I think that's like, and I say that as someone who, grew up in an area in South Jersey that was, deep Republican. I'm a Democrat that won a congressional district that Trump won twice. And so in particular, like, I not only wanted to do the town halls, but I wanted to do it in the 3 Republican congressional districts in New Jersey and try to show, like, what it means to go on the offense. What it means to be able to take that message out there and say, yes, like, these are the Republicans in New Jersey that are enabling this president to engage in this lawlessness, to set the stage for a potentially catastrophic cutting of Medicaid. And that House bill that passed for setting that reconciliation forward will only pass by 2 votes. So these 3 Republicans could very well change it if they wanted to, right? And so, like, I just felt like, that was important. So yes, like, I spun my team up. We put together these town halls. The first one was, I think, within less than 48 hours of when we announced it. So I just remember telling my team, like, is anyone going to show up?
Right. Okay.
Like,
So this is one of the things I was curious about because, like, so often people just are not engaged.
Yeah.
I mean, we go through these like bust and boom cycles of citizen engagement, and often when things go well, you don't hear from anybody. It's crickets, right? Like, people don't pay attention when things are working well, but when things are scary or uncertain or working poorly or being dismantled or ruined, then you tend to get engagement. So, okay, so you announced that you're going to do a town hall within 48 hours.
I announced on Tuesday, and then the first one was going to be on Thursday.
Part of you was like, is anyone going to come?
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah, and like, so like press was going to show up, and I was like worried that I was just going to
Yeah.
be there by myself, and But, we showed on up, had driving on up, and, we didn't have an RSVP. Anyone can show, and that's part of the point, right? And there was a line out the door. This is in Egg Harbor, New Jersey, down the shore area. Again, red area.
Red area, I was going to say.
And what was really interesting? I mean, it was packed to the brim. Couldn't fit anybody more in. We actually had to turn some people away. I felt bad about that. And when I was going around before the town hall started, I just, introduced myself to people. And I can't tell you, how many, the vast majority of people I engage with, they were saying, nice to meet you. It was their first time meeting me. These weren't people that, have been around through there. A lot of them told me it was their first ever town hall or any type of political event. And so, that was exactly what I wanted to do. A lot of them were saying, oh, we live a couple blocks down from here or this or that. We figured we'd come. That's exactly what we need to be doing in every single community that's out there, especially in these, red areas here.
This might be way too technical of a question, but did you put out a press release? Did you put it on your website? Did you put it in the local papers?
Yeah. So we put out, we put it out on social media as well as a press release that went out there. But what we could just see happening was just organically, it was being shared on social media, on, community groups, online groups. And we weren't going around pushing this.
Right.
And that was
I will
cool.
attest, my algorithm was very fired up about these town halls.
Town halls in general or specifically? Okay, you're New Jersey.
My New Jersey specific algorithm.
Yeah.
It was the two things that were happening this past weekend, or there was three things. One was AOC and Bernie.
Uh-huh.
My algorithm was all that. Second was there were a number of public park, national park protests that still dominate my feed. And the third were your town halls, Andy.
Okay, well, that's good
It was
to hear.
everywhere. It
Yeah.
was everywhere. The other part, too, is Andy knows this. I grew up in a Republican district. But my hometown high school friends were talking about it, right? It was it's exciting, man. And I don't know why more Democrats aren't doing this.
Well, and that was partly why I wanted to do this. Was just to sort of set examples, be able to come back to the Capitol this week and say it's okay if you go out there, and let me tell you how exhilarating it was to see, on the last day, 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning in Ocean County. This is the deepest red county in New Jersey, and to have so many people lined up that we maxed out the room, and then we ended up having to do a makeshift Bluetooth speaker out on the grass outside the building.
Yes.
So it was so full. There was over 200 people just huddled around a Bluetooth speaker on the grass outside the town hall, listening to it be streamed from inside. And I just there is a hunger right now, and look, I get it. You never know what's going to happen, right?
Right.
I get it. But what I can tell you is I know for certain what would happen if we don't do these town halls, which is that pressure is going to build up and it's going to explode and it's going to be so much worse.
Yeah.
This is a moment where if you don't engage, it's just going to get people angrier. It's going to get people more frustrated. They are demanding, and look, not everyone agreed with everything that I was saying, but they appreciated that I was taking the time to come on out and to be able to engage in that kind of capacity. So yes, I hope that this is something that Democrats across the board are doing, not just at the federal level, but at the state level, at the local level. I think, in fact, a lot of the local officials, they can talk directly about the harm that's going to be done to their school districts. If the Department of Education gets their funds cut, or what would happen with Medicaid if that's cut, and how our state in New Jersey and across the country, they're not going to be able to make up that deficit, right?
Right. So you often hear, or we often hear, that there's this big disconnect between what we think is important in DC and what the rest of the country is actually feeling, right? That's the perennial excuse for why an election goes a certain way. Is the insiders have lost touch. What did you hear the most in the town halls, and did anything surprise you that you were hearing from people? Yeah,
so I think what was really important, and again, it's important not just to go out there and talk, but to listen, because people want to be heard right now. But what was important is that like for instance, there was a mother at the first town hall, and she was talking about her son with Down syndrome, and he was, I think, 24, and she was talking about like she said, like, to us all while crying, she's like, this is the face of Medicaid. Like, this is what our family needs this to be able to survive, to be able to get through this. And like, I think that connecting the dots, I talked to this veteran who works with veterans trying to prevent veteran suicide, and he was just talking about how like absolutely frustrated the veteran community is right now, feeling like they made all this progress to try to build up resources and to have the VA work better for them, and then now all of a sudden they're like, a bunch of these workers at the VA are being indiscriminately fired. Like, it makes it real. Yeah. And it's important not just for me, but it's important for the other people in the room to hear this. Because like I often say, like, this, like DC and politics, they get obsessed with this question of like, what is the right message? And I get it. Like, that's an important question. But there are two other questions that I think are equally important, if not more, which is, who is the right messenger? And does the message you're trying to convey actually get to the people you're trying to speak to? And so often the answer is no. And so in this moment, like, I fully recognize, like, that mom there, she is a better messenger to so many people about why it's so important to protect Medicaid than I am. Because if I'm just saying it on my own, people are, oh, he's a politician. He's a Democrat. Of course he wants to say that. They love handouts and this. And then she can say, no, it's not. She's working a job. And in fact, if Medicaid is cut, she's gonna have to lose her job, so she has to take care of her kid. And like, so that's what we need to lift up there, and try to think through how to be able to cut through that noise. And so that's what I found so remarkable about this experience, is just hearing people's deep concerns on a personal level, worried about how it impacts their life. And I think that changes it. It makes it feel like it's not like a tug of war between two parties to figure out who's going to come out on top for the midterm elections. Like, people are like, no, like the damage to my family is happening now.
Right. Yeah. Did anything surprise you? Did anything catch you off guard?
Well, I think, beyond the fact that, I mean, viscerally, just like how many people showed up was really strong. I did see, especially for the latter two town halls, a lot of younger people showed up, which was good to see. I think that's important, and that's something that doesn't always happen on its own. So that was important.
Did they share any of the things that they were concerned about? Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I thought what I thought was really important there was this sense that, like, we can't just be talking about what we're scared of and what we're against. The younger people, they wanted, like, what's the positive vision? What's the plan? And like I was trying to say, like, for instance, when it came to whether it was the CR or what comes next in terms of the reconciliation or the budget fight that comes next, like, we should have, like, put forward our own budget, and showed like, this is a budget that is about protecting your health care, protecting Social Security, about protecting the services that families need. Like, this is what we're fighting for, and this is what Speaker Johnson put forward. Like, and the younger people love that idea, and being able to engage. The other thing that they really responded to that I was pushing on is like I've always been, and Brad knows this, like, I've always been like a crusader trying to stop corruption. It's one of my biggest things that drives me, because like I think a lot of people feel it, like, just when they're talking about a politics that feels broken, a lot of what people are talking about is corruption. This idea that people are in it for themselves or trying to make it rich. And that's why the most popular legislation I've ever introduced was legislation that would ban members of Congress and senior government officials from owning and trading in individual stocks. Like, that's something that a lot of young people were really resonant with during the town halls, and I think you can really build on that and make it something that can galvanize across the political spectrum. Corruption is something people hate across the political spectrum. So those are things that really stuck out to me.
Can we talk about the CR?
Let's
Sure.
do it. I was gonna. Well, wait. Let's
Why
get back to the
didn't
CR. Let's
we?
get back to
Yeah.
the CR.
Why didn't we introduce a budget? We knew this was coming.
I know.
Basically, since November, we knew that this day was going to come. So why wasn't there a alternative
I also
budget?
I think most people, even people who are friends of mine who run organizations, I think perplexed at the sequencing of events. How does a Senate leader strike a vote with only 11 of his caucus? You know, like what do you think broke down in that process? Because for the American people, not even for, Twig and I are obviously like political hacks and we're following this stuff
Excuse me.
very, very closely.
How dare you?
With bated breath.
Speak for
But
yourself.
even for people who don't follow this shit, it just looks like we can't get our shit together as Democrats. It's not a good look. It's
Or
not
it
a good
just
look
looked
for Democrats.
weak. It looked like we weren't even trying.
Yeah.
Like, we have to get caught trying, and I don't, like, Democrats seem to be allergic to the idea of getting caught trying to stir some shit.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was, again, just like we need to recognize that these are not normal times,
Yes.
right? Like I think there was sort of a sense, okay, this is how an appropriations process works and there's negotiations, and I totally get it. Like I'm fine with trying to give some space for negotiators, but what we start seeing, I think we should have seen it very clearly, especially when the funding freeze happened early on, is like this is not an administration that's going to give a shit about what the appropriations process yields on
They've
Capitol Hill.
demonstrated no concern
Yeah.
with past
Yes.
precedent.
And so, and we see, especially with Speaker Johnson, somebody who is just got no interest in actually doing that job,
Yeah.
and is just trying to figure out how to keep his head above water. So he was gonna just do whatever. And
Yep.
so, like, I think that needed to be seen earlier in that way, that this is not going to be a situation.
You saw it though.
Well, I
Not to
I-
give you credit,
Get
but
you in
saw
trouble
it
with your
earlier.
colleagues.
I operate off of like a hope for the best, but
Yeah.
prepare for the worst type
Yeah.
of mentality. I mean, I come from national security. I worked in war zones. Like my job is to think through strategically, what are the best case, worst case
Yes.
scenarios. And in this situation, it was like worse and worser. It was
Yeah.
like, it was clearly like, people were like, oh, it put the Democrats in a bad place. No, it put America in a bad place. Like, it was truly terrible options that were ahead of us. So I get that. But yeah, look, I mean, like for me, we cannot just bank on the idea that Speaker Johnson and the House Republicans are going to fail to come together.
Yeah.
We need to very clearly understand that we need to prepare for all of that. And in particular, it's about setting that narrative, setting even if it was about Speaker Johnson, like we could have and should going forward really try to explain like why it is that what he's doing is going to hurt people, not just that it's going to break down the traditional political appropriation process. No one cares about how that, or the average person in New Jersey doesn't care about that. But like, what does that actually mean in terms of the damage that's going to be done to people? And so, yes, like, I think the problem is that, we have clearly a difficulty of coalescing around a full strategy that isn't just about the Senate or the House, but in terms of the argument that we're taking to the American people about why what is happening is wrong. When we see what Elon Musk is doing, like, why is that wrong? Because to a lot of people, like, if you go to the average American and say, do you want a smaller government? Do you want it to spend less? Like, a lot of people are like, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And the challenge is like, by pushing back and trying to stop what Elon Musk is doing, we also have to make clear that like we're not people that are trying to condone things as they have been going on.
Right,
like,
Yes.
I
Defend
think
the
they're
broken status quo.
that status quo idea. I think that's kind of, I think that's getting that message across and taking that on now. And for me, the reason why I focus so much on anti-corruption and other issues is because, like, if people want to see Donald Trump as a disruptor, I get that. I see the value in that when at a time when we have such distrust in government. But as Brad knows, like, look, I took on the machine politics in New Jersey, fought against the corruption there. Like, I can disrupt as well, but I can do it in a better, more effective way that is about coming to an end result where people are going to have better services from government rather than what we're seeing from Donald Trump. So, like, that's the alternative that I'm hoping that we can be able to portray.
How would you grade or rate? Grade A through F, or rate 1 through 10, how well congressional Democrats are doing in this moment of whether it's resisting or offering a strategic path forward about how to interact with this moment and or presenting a vision.
Well, this is a great, because Twigg and I talk about this all the time, which is to say, there's a poll that came out last week. The approval rating for Democrats as a party is at its lowest ever.
Yeah.
20% since modern day polling. But when you ask people about your own congressperson or your own senator, the numbers go up. And so there's this, there's something happening here where, especially in the state of New Jersey, people love you. People love Senator Booker. But then they ask those same people, how do you feel about the Democratic Party? And it goes way down. And so to Twigg's point, it's like, I think it's almost unfair to ask people like Andy who are like individually like fucking doing everything, going out there. And so many others I think are doing the same. But the leadership, in our humble opinion, in terms of communicating to the American public what you all are doing, seems to be where we're lacking. Because I don't want us to say like we don't think that public servants like yourself aren't working really hard and they aren't taking this to heart. You know what I mean?
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from though, and like, you know, for me, like as I'm trying to think through, it's like part of me is like as I said, like I got a lot of problems with the Democratic Party. I sued the state of New Jersey to fix some of the things that Democrats are doing in New Jersey because I think it's broken. And like I stepped up to run for Congress 7 years ago because I didn't think the Democrats in my area, New Jersey, were earnestly trying to win back that congressional seat. But I think it's okay to think like that. Like I don't want to be somebody, and nor can I be somebody that's trying to speak on behalf of all Democrats. And I think like for me, and this is kind of indicative of what we talked about at the town hall, is like, I'm not waiting around for someone to give me instructions, right? Like the way I sort of said in 2017 is like, I'm not going to assume that someone else is going to fight my fights for me.
Yeah.
So like, yes, like, look, like I am a United States Senator now. I am somebody that like, I'm going to just do what I think needs to be done. And what I hope is that I can show proof of concept.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what we're struggling with. We're talking about things in a vacuum, but like, no, I think we should just get out there and just start doing different things. And like, I love like, you know, what like, you know, like Alex and Bernie are doing, and they're out trying what they can do.
Yep.
You know, I'm doing, you know, on the town hall side, others are doing in different ways. And like I often say, like, let's not play pee-wee soccer. We all just chase the ball.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, like, let's go out there and do what we can do well. Like, you know, I just doubled the size. I just doubled the number of millennial Democrats in the Senate.
Yeah.
You know, like me and John
Right?
Ossoff and others, we can try to reach out and try to mobilize younger voters. Like Brad and I got connected in because we're trying to mobilize, you know, AAPI Asian American people around this country. And like, you know, like, so like, but what we need is, you know, we need like that type of purposeful coordination. And like that's what I hope we can work on. And it's not going to be any single person,
Totally.
but we need to be committed to that effort. And like, so for me, who's like worked in national security, worked in war zones, like I've seen how we can try to do better by that. And I'm trying to bring to bear some of that structure now in terms of what I'm going to be proposing going forward.
And I think that's so great. And I think that one of my motivations for asking that question, and Brad and I have had this back and forth on previous episodes, is like, he's always like, Twigg, you're really dogging the party. And it's like, I know, but I also think that part of that comes from the experience that I'm having not being in DC. So whether I'm in Ohio, I'm in New York, I'm in LA, or wherever I am, there seems to be a real miscalibration. People who care about politics are like, are they doing anything in DC? Like, Carrie, tell me people are like trying to figure it out, because from the outside looking in, it doesn't look like there's a plan. Right. And so that's stressing people out. And then I think that gets to the power dynamic where you have people then be like, so I'll solve it and I'm going to start another organization.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Democrats do what Democrats
Yes.
do, which is start 500 organizations that do the exact same thing in
True.
moments of crisis. Like that's what we saw happen in 2017 because no one knew what to do. So everyone just pursued their own idea.
Yeah.
And it's like in this moment, and that led to this great like not even bifurcation, like this great decentralization of authority and power that is a major structural advantage to the right. Right. And so like we haven't quite figured out how to make decentralization a structural advantage on the left yet.
Yeah.
And so to that point, I kind of don't want to see us dilute ourselves again.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think we try and do on the podcast, on this podcast in particular, is like give a really articulate view of the inside outside for people who care but like aren't necessarily in like deep in it, right? And I think having leaders and getting a chance to interview and talk with leaders that we can point people to that are doing the things that we respect and admire and think are so desperately necessary, but then also you being really like well calibrated and saying, listen, room for improvement here. This is actually doing well. It may not look like it, may not be getting covered in the way that you think it is, but this is actually like thriving and you don't actually need to worry about that. Like, I think that's sort of my motivation.
I hear
so
you.
less about getting the senator in trouble with his colleagues
No,
or gossip, which I love. I love a little Senate gossip, but it's really just like help people to understand in this moment and either allay their fears, point them into a direction, or just be like, it's actually not good, and just keep being frustrated because your frustration actually helps us get to the good spot.
Yeah. Well, one thing that let me kind of frame from the experience I had with these town halls, for instance, because I knew I couldn't just go to the town halls and say, like, here's what's been happening and what are your thoughts? They wanted discuss. Yeah. And so I really tried to lay out like what I thought were the issues that I think are most salient with people that I've engaged with, where the biggest vulnerabilities are for the Trump administration, and how a targeted, unified approach on these can happen and how it can be powerful. And again, thinking back to 2017, where you're right, like the party was not leading that energy that emerged after the 2016 election. It was organic, it was decentralized, and it was powerful, whether there was the Women's March or Indivisible or other efforts. Like I won that in a congressional seat in a Republican district that year. It wasn't because of the Democratic Party with a capital D. It was because of that groundswell.
You weren't on red to blue D-Trip? Come on, Andy.
Some of that happened. I mean, I did have to at some point tell Brad I will no longer have him at political rallies stumping for me because he just threw a few too many F-bombs.
I mean, honestly,
I love the curse.
my mom can barely stand to listen to the podcast. My father has left me voicemails.
Controlling himself a little bit now.
Please tell.
But
one thing.
One thing I'll just say though is like what I proposed out there, and again, people can have reactions, they can have other thoughts, but I said, I personally think from what I've seen, being able to have a focused, coordinated effort on 3 points over the next couple of months, which is to save Medicaid, to stop these tariffs, and to expose the corruption. And like,
that's great.
And
I like
and,
it.
and I think like because like save Medicaid, like again, like we saved the ACA from getting gutted in 2017. It's proof of concept.
Yes.
Like we succeeded,
Yes.
and it wasn't like I really do believe that it was the popular, the support that people showing up at town halls, and it was across the political spectrum, and it gave space for people like Senator McCain and others to vote against what the party was doing. And even if we're not successful in that way, it'll galvanize the people to be able to see who voted to gut Medicaid and who didn't. The tariffs are really salient because like I think it is breaking through to people. I understand that over 60% of Americans right now surveyed don't think this president is doing enough to lower costs. Yeah. And I think they need to see not only is he not doing enough to lower costs, he is making things worse.
Yeah, he's raising them. Turns out, when he says that the American people are not going to pay the cost for these tariffs, turns out he's wrong, just like he was wrong and when he said Mexico is going to pay for the wall. Yeah, because he doesn't know what he's doing.
That is something that I think is an Achilles heel, a vulnerability for the president. And when people realize he's done all this stuff and our prices keep going up, I think there's going to be an anger there. And then the third thing about exposing that corruption, like that's where it's all coming back to.
Yeah.
Whether it's about, Secretary Lutnick shilling for Tesla stocks.
Oh my God.
Or about trillions of dollars in tax cuts to the billionaires at the expense of those people like that mom of that Down syndrome's child who are going to get their Medicaid cut. Like follow the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I know there are a lot of other issues, and that's because what the Trump administration is doing, people call it chaos. It is chaos, but it's purposeful chaos.
Yeah.
They are intentionally doing this so that you are overwhelmed and you cannot figure out what to respond to. And again, my mom always used to say, if you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing.
Yeah.
So we have to triage. It doesn't mean we're not prioritizing and caring about other issues, but we have to choose the most salient, resonant issues for the widest swath that have the greatest ability for us to penetrate through to the people who don't live and breathe politics every single day.
Right.
Totally.
There's something unique, I think. I know, Snap Center, Kim. And I'm going to say this because, we are two proud Korean Jersey boys. Let's just say it, Andy. But I think that there's something unique about growing up in New Jersey. I think
we go.
I think that New Jersey should be. In fact, I think that we should do a whole podcast on New Jersey should be the first primary state, not Iowa, not South Carolina.
Well, it's not Iowa anymore.
I know it's not Iowa anymore. Not South Carolina. It's New Jersey. Why? One, it's the most densely populated state. Two, it's actually representative racially and demographically of the entire country. And three, we are so on top of each other that you can't escape someone who differs in political opinion than you. You just can't. It's impossible. Like where I grew up, I had so many Republican friends and I had a lot of Union Democrat friends. And you didn't villainize either side. You know what you did? You just got in fights all the time. You just, I mean it. Meaning,
but not villainous fights.
Not physical fights. Although sometimes in Jersey it gets physical. No, I mean that you have to come armed. It's like anything else. If you believe in a thing, you have to fight for that thing that you believe in, and your logic and your answers and your rhetoric has to be better than the other guy. And I feel like Democrats, we become so lazy in willing to have very basic conversations about what we believe in. And I think the right loves to antagonize and poke at and question very basic foundational things that Democrats believe. And I think that you, Andy Kim, represent something where there are so few Democrats that win in red districts. So what is it? And I'm going to chalk it up to New Jersey because, like I said, it's the greatest state. I mean, Ohio's great. Ohio's a pretty great state. You got J.D. Vance, though. So
that's your home?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a tough
It's been a tough state.
It's been a tough decade.
But what can Democrats learn? Because the most alarming poll that I just saw that came out last week was that if turnout went up, did you see this?
No.
If turnout went up, if it was 100% turnout, Trump would have won by more. This wasn't a turnout election.
Yeah.
Which means to me, we have to persuade Trump voters. It's not this thing, like Democrats, again, completely deluded ourselves, that there are more of us than there are more of them. And so we just talk to ourselves and we just let them worry about themselves. And I always disagreed with that. And I always disagreed with that, one, because my parents are Trump voters. And so I'm never going to give up on people that may not see the world the way that I do. I'm not going to give up on anyone. And the fact that you are doing what you're doing, I would challenge every Democrat to do what you're doing. If you were a U.S. senator, you should be going to red districts right now, because these Republican members of Congress are afraid to do town halls. So you would be the only representative in this moment listening to them, you know?
Yeah. And
So
the voters
anyway,
the voters reward that. I mean, and
Yeah.
like, look, some of my Democratic colleagues in the Senate, they are in states that Trump won, and
Yes.
and so
Yes.
that, you know, it's powerful, and I applaud them for that, because yeah, like, look, like when I was in the House, for instance, in 2020. You know, Trump was on the ballot that year, so was I. He won my congressional district that year, and I was one of only 7 Democrats in the country to win a district that he did. And I remember we did some focus groups afterwards, some listening sessions, others, with people who voted for Trump and voted for me. And we basically just asked, like, why? Why did you vote for him and vote for Congressman Kim? And it was fascinating, you know, because what we really heard was a couple of things, and I think speaks to what you're saying. You know, first of all, people just have such just hatred for politicians and for politics right now. I mean, it's just an absolute disgust. That's the word that they would use.
Yeah.
And so for Trump to be somebody from an outside, and you give it to him, he's not somebody that is your average politician. And myself, like, you know, I'm not from that world.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I remember I was doing a parade, and someone yelled out, he's like, "Hey, Andy Kim." And I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" And he's like, "Thanks for being normal." And I just like thought, like, okay, that's about the greatest compliment that one can get in this moment right now. So there's that aspect of it. So yes, like, you know, in terms of like, how do we try to show that, you know, that whether it's a Democratic Party or an individual politician, like, how do you show that, like, you're not just tried and true, just politics through and through? The other thing I'll say is, like, look, like, as I've been diving into this, if you look at last year, elections around the world, didn't matter if you were on the liberal side or the conservative side. If you were in office, you lost.
True.
Yeah.
True.
You know, so like, I do think, yes, like, Trump's message had some resonance, but I think it was also about just this moment in the world and in this
100%.
country.
Yeah.
And like, I want us to be a little careful in kind of understanding how we're engaging. So for instance, like, you know, we're Korean Americans. I talked to some of the Korean American communities in New Jersey that voted for Trump this time around.
Yeah.
And a lot of it came back to, you know, these issues about cost of living, of the challenges in that moment, and not necessarily breaking in with the sense of like belief in all the culture battles and other things. And so, like, I think people are angry and they're frustrated, and that's something that, again, like, if we're raising up the issues about the tariffs, if we're talking about how, you know, this president's not doing enough on the economy, like, I think there's resonance there. And I think that's the kind of strategic approach that we need to be bringing together all together now.
I can't believe I waited this long to say that Senator Kim is the first Korean American U.S. Senator in history.
That's right.
I'm
proud. Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy. It's so, I don't even know. I mean, I get emotional because I'm a sap. But how does that sit with you?
He really,
I'm
I mean,
such a sap.
He has cried on so many
podcasts. So many podcasts. But how do you...
He's getting teary now.
I'm getting teary right now. The first time Andy Kim and I hung out after he won his first congressional seat, we just stayed up all night crying about our Korean moms.
Well, one of us was crying.
Yeah.
No.
We were both
crying.
crying.
We were both emotional.
We were both emotional.
Yeah, I mean, look, and like, I think that is what... Like people want to understand in the same way that, like, you know, they're telling these stories at the town halls. You know, one thing that I shared this past weekend is like, look, like this past weekend when I was at one of the town halls, I got a call saying that my dad was rushed to the hospital. He had fallen. My dad, somebody who's got a lot of health issues. He's got physical issues. He's having cognitive decline, and got rushed to the hospital. And like, my family, we're struggling with this right now.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, my parents immigrated here 50 years ago, have nobody else here but our family. And it's been a tough ride for us. You know, we are grateful for the opportunities. The idea that 50 years after my family immigrated here, that I am a United States senator.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
But we also have a situation where, like, neither of my parents, you know, like, they haven't saved up much money.
Yeah.
And, like, they both have health issues. And, like, my dad's really struggling right now, not able to pay the bills. We're trying to come together. But, like, when we see with his health issues, like, we've got basically at a point where, like, either we have to pay $10,000 a month out of pocket as a family to get him the help he needs, or we have to basically bankrupt him until he's eligible for Medicaid. Like, how are we in this situation as a country, the richest, most powerful country in the world? And if I'm having this trouble navigating Medicare and Medicaid and things like that as a United States senator, like, imagine the average person who doesn't have, you know, that as much knowledge about, you know, what they're eligible for and this and that. Like, it's broken. And, like, that's what people want to understand.
Yeah.
And why it is that, like, look, like, I won a congressional district where there are very few Asian Americans in it that voted for Trump. But how did I connect with them? It's because, again, like, I recognize that it's about the people, and it's about your ability to connect with them on a human level, and not just spew talking points, but to actually try to, and sometimes that means, like, opening up. You know, me talking about being a dad of a 7 and a 9-year-old, and then a son of a 79-year-old, and talking about, like, the weight of sandwich generation, which, like, people all over this country, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, they feel that weight.
Yeah.
And, like, they feel that weight while the billionaires are getting, you know, trillions of dollars in tax cuts. Like, and they don't want to share that with the rest of us.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the anger, that's the frustration that is so necessary to not just tap into, but to share and show that we are struggling with this too. And that's what I think this, like, that's what I take away from just, you know, the couple years that I've been in politics, and like how I try to have my North Star remind me that, like, I can't just, like, I don't want to become the politician I never wanted to be. Like, I'm not like
the one they're all talking about.
Well, it's just like, I guess I'll just say, like, that, like what I constantly have to remind myself is, like, in all honesty, like, I can't stand politics.
Yeah.
Like, at least in the form that it is now.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it's important for people to see that and to realize, like, look, this isn't a game.
Yeah.
This isn't a tug of war between two parties. It's about the fact that, like, I'm terrified about what kind of America my 2 kids are going to grow up in. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of what's happening now is going to shape and determine their lives in ways that I can't protect them from and just shield them from. And that, to me, is just like a sadness of being a father in this moment right now. And I think that, like, that's what a lot of people feel when they tell me that, like, someone was telling me this weekend, like, it's hard for them to breathe sometimes because they feel so much anxiety about the unpredictability of America, that we don't know what's going to happen an hour from now, let alone a couple days from now. And that's just, like, you know, like, how can we survive as a society with this much unpredictability?
I have to imagine that there are people at your town halls who are ardent Trump supporters. Like, do people who support him show up?
We had some.
And, like,
we had
what
some
did they have
MAGA
to
hat,
say? And
MAGA hat wearing people come by. You know, I think some, you know, like, some asked about, like, some of the legislation that was before us and this and that. You know, one asked me about just, you know, for instance, like, the Democrats. Like, how they behaved during the joint address, for instance, and things like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, why didn't we stand and clap? And I said, like, look, like, you know, like, when it comes to point out some of the guests, like, like, you know, I think some of those stories are remarkable stories, and we should be able to show our joint support in that way. But I was trying to hit home, like, But like, and the way I sort of said it is like, I don't want to be just some extra in Donald Trump's reality TV show. Though. Like, he was clearly setting this up, clearly
He did it
using
like a
this,
TV show. Yeah, for sure.
weaponizing these stories,
Yes.
Yeah.
for for an agenda that he was trying to push at. And that's what's so difficult about responding to any State of the Union, regardless of which parties in power. As the president can control so much of that narrative. But, it's like what I try to express is so much of what I see is what I call performative governance. And like I think that's what I was trying to push back on. Like some of this legislation that's coming, people were asking me why I voted this way or that way. I said, because it wasn't brought to us in good faith.
Yes.
Like they might be trying to say, oh, it's about this issue, it's about immigration or this or that, and it's about protecting families. No, it's about like a belief that they fundamentally don't think that our country should, some of them don't think that our country should be allowing immigration into this nation, that they believe in a society that is not about pluralism and not about that sense of what this country meant to my family, like why it is my family took the chance 50 years ago to come here. So like that's what I try to keep going back is like, that they're weaponizing it. I can't say that like I could tell from the interactions just this weekend, but in the past, like what I found is like, yes, showing up at these town halls, doing them in deep Republican areas. This weekend, like when you look at the entirety of my time in Congress so far, 6 years, I think this was like number 87 town hall that I've done. Like I've gone out a lot. And I have found, like, this one time, I'll just share this one story. Like, I did this one town hall in a deep Republican area, and I had a lot of tough questions asked me, and I stood before them, and I said, whether you voted for me or not, you're my boss. And after the town hall, there's a long line of people waiting. This one gentleman in the back, older gentleman, he waited 45 minutes to come and talk to me. And he came up, and he said, I just want you to know I didn't vote for you. And I was like, okay, thank you. And then he said, and I was very hesitant to come to this town hall. And then he said, but I'm glad I did. Shook my hand and walked off.
Wow.
And he waited 45 minutes to tell me
Just
3 sentences, not even a question. And that stuck with me. It was one of the most profound moments of my experience in politics so far. And when I look back on it, what I think about is I don't necessarily think I earned that man's vote for showing up, but I do think I earned his respect.
Yes.
I think that is somebody who in the future will see these attack ads about me and say, hey, look, I disagree with him, but he's not that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like he showed up. He came to me. He met us where we're at. And I think that's what I mean is like you got to get out. You cannot achieve that just through digital ads, just through mailers, just through door knockers every 2 to 4 years. The question is like, where are the Democrats and where are the people now? How do we mobilize not just around elections, but have that persistence and sustainment in terms of building community right now? And, so like that's something that I learned. And that's why I think these town halls are so important is because it shows them you respect. I showed up in towns that people were like, no Democrat ever shows up in this town. And I'm like, well,
here I am.
Yeah. and that means something. And so like, yeah, look, it's not all the answers, but I think it's symbolic of some of the deeper problems we have of a society that feels more and more disconnected, where people are feeling more tribal. And we see, the rise in that moment of a dangerous kind of selfishness and narcissism. I guess the way is like, it feels like things are being seen as zero sum in our society.
Yeah.
And we're losing touch with this idea that we're part of something bigger than all of us. And the town hall fights against that.
Yeah.
It tries to create a sense of like, this is what our democracy should look like, of people coming together, and that our democracy doesn't exist just down at the Capitol building. It's right there in Egg Harbor, New Jersey, or Branchburg, New Jersey, or Bricktown, New Jersey. That's where our democracy is.
So it's hard to believe, but we're only 2 months into this thing.
Is it really?
It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's not even. Today's my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Jonna. Happy birthday. March 23rd, 24th.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2 months. I mean,
2
he would have
months.
taken office January 20th, right?
You're right.
Like, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like it's been ages. Like, how do you? This is such an impossible question, so I acknowledge that. But like, what's gonna happen? Like, where are we? What's there gonna be left after 6 months? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah. So putting my mind reading, future seeking. I mean, look.
Like, is there any scenario planning happening?
Yeah, there is. I mean, certainly with the work I'm trying to do, again, like trying to think through how it is we can save Medicaid. I mean, we know that the next big fight is going to be about reconciliation. And that effort, and that's, again, a moment to really seize upon and really try to highlight, because I think, you're going to see through that legislative process something different than what you saw in the previous 2 months.
Will you break down what we were talking about for anyone listening who doesn't actually know what we mean when we say reconciliation?
Yeah, so when it comes to legislation that you can get through Congress, we one vehicle has been what's called budget reconciliation, because this allows a party to be able to get something through Congress with just a simple majority. So, the Democrats, we did this with the Inflation Reduction Act to be able to get climate change legislation through, lowering health care costs. The Republicans are trying to do this to jam through, again, tax cuts for the billionaires, the multimillionaires. But they have to balance the equation. So if they're given trillions of dollars of tax cuts, where is that money coming from? And so that's why the budget reconciliation process is unique in that way. It's saying, okay, you got to figure out how to balance that out. And so if you got trillions of dollars of tax cuts on one side, what's going to be on the other side of the equation? Yeah. And what you see is $880 billion upwards that could be cut from Medicaid. You see SNAP benefits being potentially cut for addressing food insecurity, hunger from the most vulnerable people that are out there. I mean, there's a lot that is on the line. And yeah, I think that's going to be incredibly scary for so many people. And, I think, again, not just Democrats, there are a lot of people on Medicaid all over the country.
And
I
when,
think
do we have a timeline for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Republicans are saying they're going to try to push this through over the course of the next couple weeks. I mean, like if they can get it through by Easter, I think that they would like to, because, they want to just ram it through and not have the American people see what is happening here.
Yeah.
And so again, like, Trump's administration, they're going to continue to do crazy things and say, look over here, don't look there. But like, the first couple weeks of this administration have been particularly painful because those were their set plays. These were the executive orders, the things they can just do on their own. A lot of what comes next, if they're able to get their agenda, is going to require Congress. And that's going to mean hopefully a process that we can be able to expose a lot more to the American people. And also, the American people can then apply pressure upon their members of Congress. And again, these are record narrow majorities in the House in particular, Senate as well, just a handful. And so, like, I hope that this is a place where the American people see, like, your voice matters now. Absolutely. There's a why do you think Republicans are not doing town halls? Is because like they know
they're getting chased out of town.
Yeah, they know that their ideas are unpopular.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're trying to discredit the voters and say, or the people showing up, say, oh, they're just activists. In the same way that they're trying to discredit the judiciary right now, saying that judges are, activist judges, even though they, were appointed by George W. Bush and others. So like that's their game plan, is to try to discredit anybody who doesn't sort of sign up as a loyalist or someone who pledges fealty to this president.
I always try to remain optimistic, and what I've tried to hope for, and I think it's happening. I think that this past week something has shifted. I'm not sure. I think you've seen it with the town halls, but I feel like the American public are animated and activated and engaged in a way that's different than in 2017. Because I think this time they're actually learning about what the federal government is, right? Because they're such a sledgehammer, and I love for you to talk about USAID because you've been such a leader. on international development. But I think that people are like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, the park system. I like parks. Like I like NOAA. I like education opportunities for disabled children. I like Medicaid. I like Medicare. These are all things that
I think people don't even realize they are part of the federal government until it's been taken away.
Yeah. And so, in a way, I mean, again, this is like really half glass full shit here, so excuse me. But like, in a way, this is healthy because I think we have, especially this younger generation, where they're growing up, they're coming to age as new voters, not taking this for granted, right? And fighting for it and being outside the USAID building. Because certainly, I don't think that part of the reason why this has been so effective, why Doge has been so effective up until very recently, till the pushback, is because I don't think most Americans even knew what USAID was. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so as someone who's, you were a real big leader, by the way, on the pushback.
And we're still trying to save
fighting,
USAID
exactly.
and reinstate it. And look, like, to the average person, they might not know what USAID does in terms of how it provides development and humanitarian support. I care because, 21 years ago, my first day showing up to work for the federal government was at USAID.
Yeah.
I was fresh out of college, started an internship initially, got a paid job, and I was proud. I was proud to work for this agency. And what I keep saying to the American people is USAID, it's not charity. This isn't about us, donating money to other countries just because. Like, it is a tool by which we grow this question of importance of American global leadership, which we benefit from.
Yes.
We benefit from being the most powerful country in the world, the largest, strongest economy in the world. That doesn't just happen on its own. We haven't seen this multiple generations of growth in America just because. And, I think that's what I wanted to make sure the American people understand is the Trump administration and Elon Musk, they're not just trying to gut USAID, they are trying to put in place a radical, in my opinion, dangerous agenda of neo-isolationism.
Yeah.
They are literally trying to say we should no longer be the leader of the world, that we should no longer be taking up that mantle. And I think a lot of Americans would be uncomfortable about American withdrawal from the world, our retreat from the world. Like, we've grown up understanding that, like, yes, we have a certain capacity to be able to engage. But it was kind of like what we were saying earlier. As I was saying, our society's become more zero-sum internally. It's being seen zero-sum globally as well.
Yes.
And even if you're in that mindset, then I hope they can see that when we stop funding these programs around the world, China's stepping in now.
Yep.
China's saying, oh, if America's not going to continue this program, then we'll take it on, and we'll show you how we're more reliable than the United States is. Like, what is happening on the global level, whether it's, Vice President Vance's shameful speech at the Munich Security Conference, where I was there in the room watching this.
Were you really?
I was there.
Tell us every.
I was there for every gasp, every
How
uncomfortable
Andy,
Republican squirming next to me.
We have to clarify. J.D. Vance is Kerry Twigg's arch nemesis. Arch nemesis.
Ohio.
So I just want to. They're both Ohio people.
Yeah. He doesn't know it, but we are. We are locked in a mortal opposition to one another. Wait. Okay, so you were there as in your capacity as a senator
at the Munich Security Conference. I had just finished meeting with with President Zelensky and other leaders, and then in this room, and then watched Vice President Vance give again one of the most shameful speeches I've ever seen an American leader give in front of allies and partners. Just disrespecting them. I mean, this president does too in terms of saying, like, questioning NATO, questioning why, and like. Coming from New Jersey, our state got hit hard by September 11th, and we lost, hundreds of people in our state. And the only time that NATO collective defense has ever been, Article 5 has ever been invoked is after September 11th for the defense of the United States. And so, like, what we're seeing right now is an effort that isn't about fairness, as they try to say with these tariffs. It's literally about American withdrawal. This idea that the best way to translate it is that America first basically means America alone, that we go it alone, that we're on our own. And I hope people see that that's the absolute wrong step for us to take. It'll make us less safe, as Putin and President Xi and others are just gleeful about American withdrawal. But it's also just it's gonna hurt our economy.
Yes.
It's gonna hurt our ability to innovate as we're continuing to turn our backs on the rest of the world. So that's
Did
why.
any world leaders come up to you and were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. I mean, well, one of them came up and literally asked, like, do I think that President Trump, if there was like a terrorist attack or some attack upon a NATO allied country, they asked, like, do I think President Trump would live up and fulfill our responsibility as the United States? And I said, I don't know. In fact, I think maybe not. That's like, it shows you how scary things are. And then, Trump basically went on to say that basically on his own.
I know. It's like,
at
you
a
didn't
later
need to
point.
say that.
But yeah, like, they very much got the sense that, like, that the transatlantic alliance that has been an anchor point for American global strength and security, that it's over. They feel that way. And, like, one of them just said, like, look, like we can't wait for you anymore. They said that to me. We can't wait for America anymore. So you all, like, you let us know when you get your act together and you pull yourself together. But we're just gonna go off and do our own thing. I mean, like, and they're just,
we got
they're not
broken
waiting
up
for
with.
us.
We got
We
dumped
got
by
dumped
Europe,
by the world.
by everyone
We got dumped
in
by
the world.
everyone.
Yeah.
We're back with our trash.
But they're not saying it's me, not you. They're saying it's you.
It's you.
Yeah.
They're being honest.
100% your
Yeah,
fault. Yeah.
We can't keep you forever, although we wish we could. Also,
On the podcast, on the Senate, you can stay as long as you want. Turns out.
Oh yeah, I meant on the
You're
podcast.
way under indexing on
Exactly.
age. It turned.
Yeah, that's true.
It's got about 45 more years.
But how should we close, Andy? I'd love for you to offer some words of hope. I think we've been asking folks. I feel like it's very appropriate timing, given you had this, moving, inspirational town hall weekend. But what brings you hope right now? Because I do know. And I just want to say, and I've said it every pod, and you guys know me, I'm cheesy. But when I do say it, I always do get like DMs from people saying thank you, because I think that, to your point, we forget how this is like a really tough moment for a lot of people, and these consequences and these actions have very real impacts on real families, And so it's hard. Like, when you wake up, sometimes it's hard. I mean, you're in the fight, so it's not hard for you. But for people on the outside looking in, it can feel paralyzing, right? It could feel like, well, what the hell? What's the point of it all? And so for those people listening to the pod and who are fans of yours, like, what would you offer in terms of hope or not? You can just tell them, give up hope.
It's over.
It's over.
Yeah. This is the last podcast that will ever take place in a democratic-free America. No, I like, first and foremost, like, I talk about just the necessity of this moment, right? Like, I talked about how my family's been here in America 50 years, but now I'm thinking about the next 50 years, my kids' lives. And so I say, like, I think about this not just as a senator, but as a dad. And I just say, like, I refuse to believe that my kids are doomed to grow up in a broken America, an America that has this much chaos and crisis that's out there. Like, I still believe it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
And so therein lies this question of, then what do we do about it? And as someone who worked in diplomacy, I worked and lived in a lot of authoritarian nations before. And I used to think that the opposite of democracy was dictatorship, was authoritarianism. And, you know, rightfully so. It feels very much apt, especially in this moment. But what I come to believe over the last 6-7 years that I've been in politics is I keep saying this line that I believe actually that the opposite of democracy is apathy. It's if people give up, if people have this sense of helplessness.
Preach.
Like, what point do we have of seeking our vote, our voice, if we feel helpless about it, if no one's going to care? That's why the Trump administration tries so hard to discredit election results and other things, is they want you to give up. They want you to feel helpless. Why is it that they're doing all these executive orders every single day about this issue and that issue? It's purposeful chaos because they want to demoralize you.
Yeah.
The way that Russell Vought, head of OMB, talks about, he wants to traumatize you.
Yeah.
He wants to traumatize the American people. So I just say, like, look, like, we have to fight against that. The best way to do it is by doing it alongside other people. You know, like, you have to find ways to sustain your attention, sustain your participation. Otherwise, you see what the other side does. Like, how many times have we had a mass shooting in this country, and then the gun lobby, they just say to themselves, just wait. Just wait a couple of days and all this will die down. They'll move on to, you know, just what's happening in season 3 of White Lotus. And, like, instead, what we have to show is, like, no, like, we're not going to just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And, like, we have to sustain it. But the best way to sustain it is about finding people alongside you to do so.
I love that, man.
So get out there,
love that.
find a community, find people that you can fight alongside, because otherwise it's too much for any of us to bear alone. And that's going to be exhausting. I mean, I'm sure everyone feels exhausted. I feel it too.
Yeah.
But being in that fight, being at these town halls and seeing, like, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
People feel something here. Now the question is, you know, we showed up to the town hall today, but what's our plan for tomorrow?
Yes.
What's our plan for next week, next month? And certainly in New Jersey, I mean, we got, you know, a governor's race coming up.
Yeah.
Like, we can
This is
shape
a big
things
year for
nationally.
Jersey.
Yeah, we can shape
Big
things
year.
nationally in ways that, you know, that are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So, you know, please, like, that's what I keep saying. Let's fight against the helplessness, fight against the apathy, keep it going.
Well, if you are feeling waking up in the fetal position like many people in America, I urge you, if you've not already following Andy Kim, to do it. Because, like, I feel like you're like a salve, man. It's so true. Because you're also doing it, you know, speaking of the reality show, you're the opposite of the reality show. You're like, you're just...
But still very watchable, which is
Yes,
important.
that's
Which
a
is
good
like
point.
a reality of
Okay.
the moment that we're in is
Sure.
that you're not... We are living in a communications landscape and ecosystem where you actually have to be able to break through. You have to be able to hold people's attention. You have to be able to enter into a paradigm which none of us want our government or our politics, at least none of us here, want it to be a television show. But that's what it is right now.
Yeah.
And that is, and it is working for Donald Trump and his ability to detract from, to allow these Republicans to vote for things that people do not want.
Yes.
And not think that they are all going to lose their seats is because they know they are going to be able to distract people with content somewhere else. And so unless we drop into that reality of,
Yes.
like, in order to make gains that we need, but then protect those gains, we have to be able to hold people's attention. And people love reality television.
Sure.
So it's like, it's really easy for us to poo-poo it, but the reality is that we have to engage in that as well, at least in this particular moment, until we can make government boring again. And so
good
you
point.
are the anti, like, spectacle.
Yeah.
But you are also, I think, because you're so authentic, because you're so fearless in terms of, like, of course I'm going to show up and talk like a human being because I am one, and not, like, hide in my office in the Russell, but, like, what are you guys doing? Like, that you actually are really watchable, and it's very charismatic, and it's very fun to engage with, and it makes people feel hopeful because they get to actually see the images that they are not alone. But you have to be able to break through,
Right.
and that does require a certain degree of, like,
Courage.
something
Yeah, I agree. I
to
agree.
undermine your point in the last
No,
minute.
I
of the
love
thing.
it. I love it. I'm fired up.
Are you watching season 3 of The Lotus, of White Lotus?
I got through the first episode. Can't say
Okay.
I'm
It's a slow
fully in
burn.
it.
Is there anything
Is it?
there anything you do watch? Are you a YouTube guy?
No. I've actually, I think right now, like the main thing that I watch is just my kids rollerblading back and forth on the sidewalk.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I don't see them nearly as much as I'd love to, so I just try to give them my attention.
Amazing.
It helps me just
That's
keep some
your-
distance from this all.
We love
This is
you.
great.
We love
Thank
you,
you for
Senator
being
Kim.
here.
We want you to come back.
Yeah.
Follow Senator Kim. You can Google it. People know how to Google. But are there things? Are there things for people? Speaking of Jersey, are there things to point folks to? Are there other town halls you guys have cooking up?
Yeah,
or-
we're
okay,
you know,
great.
please keep an eye out on what
Yeah.
we're up to. It's they can follow us on social media.
Yeah.
And I think that, please, keep up with not just me, but, others that are out there and lift up and pay attention. And so, yeah, we're going to continue to be out there and encouraging other Democrats to get out there. But also, like I said, we need to go and try to mobilize, gearing up for the elections.
Yes.
Gearing up to be able to really mobilize in a lot of different ways. Jamie Raskin and I are doing things to try to get young voters,
Yes.
young people engaged. So we're launching a nationwide effort, a number of different fronts that we need to do.
So fun.
Yeah.
So fun. All right, Andy, we love you, bro. We're gonna get you a Twigg and Jenkins hoodie. I'm not
That's why I
saying
came on here.
I'm not saying you have to wear it in the chamber with Senator Fetterman, but it would be kind of great. if
It
you
is an
were.
option.
It
So
would
just
be
be
an
sure to
option.
send us a pic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we love you, Andy. Thank you so
Thanks
much, man.
Thanks for having me.
Peace.
Finito.